And we're back for another Technique Tuesday. So we're going to talk about a bind off today. If you're curious to know about this bind off, why you would use it, and what it's called, and how to do it, stay tuned. I'm Aradia Noari. I'm the resident witch and creatrix over at Aradia's Hand in Is Divine, where I create myth, magic, and meaning for your everyday life through art, intuition, and energy work. And on Tuesdays, I like to do a technique every now and then. So, I'm going to be focusing on very simple single techniques and tutorials. So just the knit stitch, just the purl stitch, just this kind of bind off, just this kind of cast on, etc. So you can just get directly to the video that you want, learn the one thing that you're interested in, and go about your project making. So today we're going to talk about a looser or stretchier bind off than if you were to bind off in just the standard fashion. Now there are as many cast-ons as there are bind offs. A lot of people like to pair their cast-ons and their bind offs depending on what they're making, because that can be really handy when it comes to something like a shawl or a cardigan or a sweater, where you may have a neck that needs to be looser, and then the edging or the bottom of the work needs to be looser as well. So we used a long tail cast on for this, so this should look familiar if you've seen the long tail cast on video. And because this is a sample, the cast on stretchiness compared to the bind off stretchiness really is irrelevant, but that is something to take into consideration when you're starting a project, particularly if you were designing it yourself. What are the characteristics of the cast on and bind off that you need for what you're making? So this is just a simple stretchy bind off. This is not to be confused with Jeny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, which is even stretchier than this. And this is worked in pattern, but you can work it with stockinette, you can work it with reverse stockinette, you can work it with any pattern. I just wanted you to be able to see how knit and purl stitches are worked, because they are definitely worked in pattern for this particular bind off. And I will say the standard bind off has the least amount of stretch to it. Binding off in pattern, when it's particularly when it's ribbing, will have a little more stretch to it, but this has even more stretch than that. And then I would say Jeny's surprisingly stretchy bind off probably has even more than this, because there's some extra steps that are involved in that. And we'll also be doing a video on that, so there you go. And the reason you would use this is if you're making something that needs a little more stretch to it. This is good for cardigans. I have yet to use it with a sock, so I cannot comment whether it is a good idea for sock cuffs. Usually I use Jeny's for that. But I also make my socks like knee high, so they're right around your calf, which is the largest part of your lower leg. So having that extra stretch is really, really helpful. But I'm actually working on a cardigan, and I'm using this bind off for that, and I think it's working very nicely so far. I like it a lot. It's not so stretchy that it's too stretchy, I feel, but it's stretchy enough that it's not going to be too tight around the edging. So that's yay! You will need, of course, whatever you're working on, your yarn and needles. And other things you will need will be scissors. I'm actually using this as a sample, so I'm not going to be cutting this piece, but obviously you would have your darning needle or your yarn needle and your scissors. You probably have had a tape measure, because you need to know how long something needs to be or what have you. So here we go. This has worked very simply. And like all of our other videos, I'll link this video to all the other bind off videos and all the other bind off videos to this one. So, get it started, you're going to knit your first stitch, because this is a knit, and you're going to knit your second stitch. And then you're going to take the left needle, insert it into the front of those loops that are on the right, and you're going to knit through the back. Now, there's not really a big deal about how you wrap your yarn. That goes into knitting methods, and I find that what I personally do is whatever way of wrapping works for the stitches I'm about to work is the way that I do it. And I have yet to have a problem with doing that, so we're going to call it good. And so now we've done our 2 knit stitches. Now we need to do a purl, so you're going to move the yarn into the front, and then you're going to insert your left needle into the back, and you're going to purl through both the stitches that are on the needle. You've got another purl, so do that again. And so what you're doing is you're purling through the front loop and you're knitting through the back loop as you work these stitches off the needle entirely. And as you can see, it's flaring out a bit, which tells you that yes, it's going to be a bit stretchier. And you see if I do like this, I can get it there. But if I do like this, I know I can get it there too. So it doesn't really matter. I am what I would call a true combination knitter, in that I absolutely knit in a number of ways. But I'm not a combination knitter in the technical sense, because that actually combines different parts of the other 2 styles, and I don't actually knit that way. Just a little funny. Okay. So we're going to pass that through there. We're down to our last 2 stitches, which we're going to knit. Sorry about that. Knit those through the back loop. And there you go. So we're just going to pretend that's cut. Ignore it. Now, as you can see, here is the bind off, right? Or the cast on, right? And it's a bind off, and the bind off is a good deal bigger than the cast off. There's a little more stretch to this bind off, which is what you want, and it's the whole purpose of using this. So I hope that was easy to understand. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the box below. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's any other bind offs that you would like to see demonstrated, feel free to let me know and I can make a video. Thanks so much, and happy knitting. Bye.